start with your name and...
Ready now?
Yep, we're rolling.
Okay. My name is Stone Muige. I was born on Terminal Island on August 26, 1930. I had two brothers and one younger sister. It was a good life for us at Terminal Island. My father was a fisherman on a tuna clipper. He used to go down to Mexico as far as Panama. And so he was gone for many weeks. And so when I think about it now, I didn't spend much time with him because he was always out at sea. And there was a story that I heard when I was just a little boy, that my father was thrown into the ocean. And I said, gee, I wonder if a big tuna must have dragged him in. And so I kept wondering, how could that happen? Well, it could happen because of the size of the tuna, you know, they're big. But then, just not too long ago, my daughter checked the Ancestry.com and found out what really happened. The tuna boat that he was on, they were in Panama, they were off the coast of Costa Rica. And one night, the boat was rammed by a freighter, and they were all rescued by Puerto Rican immigration, and they were taken and registered there. So that is why it's in the it's in the registry. So I don't know how he got back, but that was a story why he was in the water, got rammed. Anyway, it was a good life. When my father was home, you know, he always liked to bake and talk to friends, pack fish to friends, and go visit our friend, a farming friend. He liked to play samisen, the Okinawa song, but he didn't drink. A little cup of sake would have laid him down for the rest of the day. But whenever he was home, we used to take trip in the jalopy that we had. And surprisingly, I found out that in our neighborhood, maybe we were the only one who had a car. It was one of those Model T, and, but it wasn't hardly used because he was out at sea. But I found out later that my father didn't have a driver's license. But we went to many places to visit when he was home. Yeah, and he likes to cook. He used to make bake cakes and things like that. And he did it not only for us, but for the neighbors. We have a close-knit neighbor. We're like lined up, you know, the homes were lined up. So we're very close. And so we talk to each other, we take food, and they bring food. And it was a nice community, yeah. So that was my father's life. He was very good, very kind. He always helped anybody in trouble. But he was normally very quiet, not much. And I didn't know about his sports, whether he liked sports or not. But one day he went to San Pedro, got on the streetcar, went to Los Angeles, and saw Joe Louis fight. He went to see Joe Louis before he became a world champion. So that was a big surprise to me that he liked that, yeah. And other than that, our life with my father was very normal in Terminal Island. My mother, being a single parent, you know, type with my father out at sea, she raised us mostly, the four of us, and she still worked at the cannery. And the cannery that she worked, they have a distinctive horn, a siren, to let the workers know when to report to work. It can happen during the day or during the night. So my mother, whenever she hears that, she'll go out and work. So she was busy. She was working. She was raising four of us. and doing all the sewing and ironing and all that. Yeah, I can't imagine she did all that, but she was good and she got along with the neighbors. It was really a good life there in San Pedro. And then, of course, what happened.
Let me pause a sec. Your phone was buzzing.
Oh. Well, so that was a good life in Terminal Island until one day we went fishing near our backyard. It wasn't too far. And we had a nice time fishing. And at that time we saw all of the fleet, the Navy fleet, anchored along the water, breakwater. The whole fleet was there. And I said, well, gee, that looks nice, you know. We talked about it. And then the next week, we went fishing again, and it was a good day to fish. But when we looked out, there was no ship. The whole fleet was gone. So I said, I wonder where did they go in a week's time. So for lunch, my brother said, go home and get lunch. So when I went back to get lunch, all the ladies were huddled and talking, and that's when I found out that Pearl Harbor was bombed. Then I realized the fleet was in Pearl Harbor. It had left San Pedro the week before. So that was the beginning of all the things that happened after that. And things were very chaotic because my father and my mother, they didn't know what was going to happen until my father got arrested by the FBI. And that was in February, I guess. And he was taken to the penitentiary in Terminal Island and then to Tuna Canyon, at that time known as Tahunga to us. And then found out then he went to Fort Missoula in Montana. And from there he went to Santa Fe. And from what I heard was that he spent a little time at Fort Livingston in Louisiana, and then he came to join us in Arkansas. And that was for a very short time. And from that point, I'm not too sure, but I think my father went back to Santa Fe from there because he was always wanting to go back to Japan, and he said that over and over again. So he went back, and the five of us, we went to Tule Lake because of my father wanting to go to Japan, and he said he wants to take my family. So we all went to Tule, and we didn't have much to do in Tule. There's some disturbance there, but we weren't involved in it because we were at the farthest point from where the problem occurred, which was at the end of the camp. So there's some conflict and I can't remember, but my father was supposedly involved in the radical group, and I know about that. But from what I can remember, he wasn't there. He was in Santa Fe. So it was a little confusing. And then my mother told me that he sent my oldest brother to Santa Fe to talk to my father about not going to Japan. And he never came back. I found out that he and my father were sent to Japan from Santa Fe. And so when we went to Japan the following year, I guess it was, they were there, my father and my brother. And they had a job, and so that part was okay. And my father had worked in the army camp, And then around that time, my mother got sick. I think she had some form of cancer, I guess. And she was in the hospital for 3 or 4 months. And so my father quit the job and stayed with her day and night. And at that time, my sister and I were living in a dormitory, a 2-story. We're on the 2nd floor. And I used to go to the hospital every day to take food and whatever I could get. And that went on for all the time that she was there. And other than that, things were normal, except one night the dormitory got caught fire, and we were burned out. I opened the door, I inhaled a heavy smoke, almost passed out, and there were just the 2 of us. So we ran down the hall, we got on the lower roof, which was the extension of the building for the latrine, and from there we jumped to the ground, and the only thing we had was what we had on the back, the clothes. Everything was burned, and the following day, my sister and I were walking barefoot, and one of the men who came from the South Pacific, he saw us and he gave us a couple $100 yen. He said, "Go and buy yourself a slipper." So that was a good thing that we got. Otherwise, we were barefooted, and there was nothing left of the fire. One man was killed in the fire, and then we found another apartment to stay in, and that was okay. And things were pretty normal. After that, my mother was okay. She got back from the hospital, and then we moved to a house in a town called Zushi, which is not far. And we had a house, so we all moved there. And my father didn't work anymore. My mother was home. And I worked at the Army camp for a while. And then I got a job with the PX. And that was about 1950 or so. And so I had commissary and PX privilege, so that helped us with our living. My brother went to work in Tokyo, and my other second brother was also living in Tokyo, so just the 4 of us. My sister went to Japanese school there, and I was working for the PX. And then I joined the Air Force at that time, and I served 4 years in the Air Force in Japan. And things were okay. We had a pretty good time there. After being discharged from the Air Force, I got a job again with the PX, and I went to Korea. And I stayed there 4 years and got a job in Misawa in northern Japan. At that time, my father and my mother returned to the States, and they were staying with my brother. And but my father still kept insisting that he wants to go back to Okinawa. That was his main thing. And one of the things that I think affected him just as bad was one day when my father and I went to a bank in Tokyo. He had savings in the States, and that money was to be used for our education, either in the States or in Japan. And so when he cashed that in, there was hardly any money left. And he was so disappointed and angry. I think that made it more, him to go back to Okinawa and live with his family. And at that time, everything was in turmoil in Japan, and all the Ginza stalls were all filled with soldiers coming back from war, and the thing I remember is that there was no commotion. They were all behaving, and there was no riot, no argument. You know, they're trying to make a living on their own, you know, trying to find food and things like that. So after that, after my father came back to the state, he finally told my mother and a brother and sister that he wants to go to Okinawa. So finally they consented, and he left Japan. He left LA for Okinawa. My mother didn't go. She said she wants to stay with the kids. So when my father arrived in Yokohama, I was working in Misawa, the northern part, pretty far, overnight train ride. And then so I went to pick him up the following day at the port. And I took him back to Misawa, to the house we had. And at that time, my daughter, who was born there, was 2 years old. And it was a good thing because my father was able to hold her and hug her. That's the only time. And then after a day or two, I took him back to Haneda, the airport, and he flew back to Okinawa. About a year later, I guess it was, I was working way up in Hokkaido, and I got a message that my father had passed away. So I came back to my hometown, my home base, and I made an arrangement to go to Okinawa. It took me 2 days to get a flight from Misawa to Haneda, and then Haneda to Okinawa. And when I got there, the funeral was already completed. And what happened there is that because of the weather, the heat, they had to cremate early. And my father had built a family tomb, huge tomb, looked like an air raid shelter. And matter of fact, the Air Force, the U.S. Air Force, thought they were all air raid shelter because they were spotted all over the island. And so I went to the tomb, and my father was already interned there. And that's what he wanted. He wanted to be in Okinawa with the family and die there. So he got his wish. So that was the end of his life, because my mother stayed with us for all these years with my brother. And then later on, she stayed alone for a while in Silver Lake area, and then got a room in Cairo. And she's taken Cairo for, I think, 10 years or more, I think. And then from there she went to South Bay, and she stayed there another 4 or 5 years, I believe. I should go there every week to see her. And one day, I got a call. My mother was not feeling well, and they called the ambulance, took her to the hospital, and she died on the way. So that was the end of that life. So she and my father have a cemetery, a grave at the Rose Hill, side by side. Yeah, and it was a turbulent time for both of them. We were kids, you know, so things weren't that bad. But I always think how difficult it was for them to go through all that, you know, during the war and after the war, you know. It's a very tragic time for all the Issei. Yeah. So we're very thankful for the Isseis, all the work and the sacrifice they made. Yeah. So today we live a fairly good life.
Can you tell me your brothers and sisters' names and how old they are?
My brothers?
Your brothers and sisters?
Yeah, my oldest brother was named Ken. He was he was 15, I think, when the war started. And the second son was Hiroshi, and he was 15 or 14. And I was the third son, and I was 11 at that time. And my sister, Yasue, was born 3 years later, so she was about 8. So there were 4 of us. My sister, after she returned to the States from Japan, she, by the way, came alone, I think, because my parents came earlier. And my sister got here, stayed with my brother, eventually got married and lived in Chatsworth. It's not, unfortunately and very sadly, she had cancer at 54 and passed away. So that's been a long time ago. Yeah, my other 2 brothers, one was a gardener. I think what happened to him was he had some blood disease because he was a gardener and using all the insecticide and things like that probably affected her. And so he died in the hospital for that kind of reason, I guess. And my oldest brother, he lived a long life with his wife, and we could tell he was weak. And so I used to go see him. And then one night, he went to sleep and never woke up. And that was 3 years ago. So now I'm the only one. I'm trying to remember as much as I can about the family.
Where was your father and mother from in Japan? What kind of work did they do?
Oh, my father and my mother, they were from a small village. I think most of the relatives were fishermen, but my father had some land that he bought, and so they were growing vegetables or whatever. I think he has 5 or 6 little plots, and my cousin who was living there with him took care of it. So he didn't do anything other than just not do anything. Yeah. And my mother, of course, here she was a housewife and she assisted my sister-in-law and things like that. So they didn't work at all after that.
Were they from Okinawa?
Huh?
Do you know the village they came from Okinawa?
Yeah, my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my parents is from Okinawa. There's a village called King, which is the biggest village in that area that has all the offices, the village offices, and the village that my mother and father was born was 5-6 miles south, and it was called Yaka, and it's a very small place, mainly fishing and farming, and nothing much there. The scene was nice, the water and the ocean, but it wasn't developed in any way except I heard that during the occupation, after the war, the Yaka Beach was used as a R&R center for the troops. So they went to Yaka and had their swimming and other recreational activity. And so that was their thing, I guess.
Do you know why your father wanted to come to America?
To Japan, to a state?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's a pretty well-known fact that the Okinawans were treated poorly, by the Japanese, and they were more like second-class citizens. And especially from what I heard, one of the big clan in Japan at that time, in Kyushu, the lord of the clan sent troops to Okinawa, and they forced everyone to grow sugarcane, I guess. And during that time, all the farmers, the people were treated real bad, and things were getting worse after that. So that's when the immigration started, and that's where my father and my father lived, and my father went to Hawaii, worked in the sugarcane field near Pearl Harbor. Matter of fact, I think he worked on Pearl Island, and then a year or two later, he went back to Okinawa to marry my mother, and then they came directly to Angels Island in San Francisco, and from there they went to L.A. and then to Terminal Island, and in between they worked in the field picking strawberries and whatever they could do. Yeah, so that was their life. It was a pretty hard life for all of them. Yeah, but that was, I think I can say that for most of the first generation. They all went hard. You know, it was tough. Yeah.
Do you think you know, or can you guess why they came to pick up your father?
Well, yeah, that day, you know, when all the fishermen were picked up, it was a known thing, I guess, that the FBI knew or had an assumption that all the fishermen knew the coast very well, and all the boat was equipped with shortwave radio and shotgun and other things, and the government was afraid that some of the fishermen working along the coast could be aiding the Japanese, and so they were considered dangerous, and that's why they were the first one to be picked up. All the fishermen, I think there were 500 or whatever it was, and when I went to school that day with the lunch that my father prepared for me, it was nice. We had another average day, and I got home about 2, and he wasn't there, and there was no men around there. And when I asked around, found out the FBI picked them up. And so since then, I didn't see him until we got reunited in Arkansas, at Roar. I think it was 2 or 3 years later. Yeah, but because my father was away at sea so often, I guess it didn't impact me that much that he was gone, because he was always gone to sea.
Did they tell you where they took him? Did they tell you? How did you find out where he was?
Well, like I say, our neighbor was close, so they all had information from the group or from other sources. Found out that they were taken to the penitentiary in Terminal Island. It's a penitentiary now too, and from there they were taken to Tahanga, to Tuna Canyon, and then from there to Missoula. When my father was in Missoula, we were in Roar, already in Roar. And my father, I remember, he made wooden guitar, the clogs, for the 4 of us. And he had a bag of pine nuts that picked, and he sent all that to us. And when we got it, we were so happy, but the guitars were all too small because we had all grown. And so I don't know what happened to the guitar, but the pine nuts was great. Yeah, and that's the only time that I remember that we first heard from him after he was picked up. And that was 2 or 3 years later. Yeah. Yeah, I had no idea where he was sent until we got that package. Yeah. Well, that's the life.
How was your mother during that time after
My
you
mother?
got picked up?
Oh, you know, I can't imagine what went through her mind. You know, and she was alone with the four of us. All the husbands around were gone, and I don't know what we did, but and then of course the order came for the people to evacuate Terminal Island in 48 hours. And my God, I don't know. My mother, you know, we had a car, we had furniture and radio, and I don't know what happened to it. There were a lot of people coming to pick things up at rock bottom prices, and you know, and I'm sure there were a lot of things that were left behind that were picked up by these people later. Yeah, it was complete chaos, and I had no idea. But like the Ige family, and it was called Heinz. They had a farm and a house, and Fred, the oldest son, came to pick us up with his truck, and we went to his place and we stayed there until we went to Santa Anita. We were asked to go to Santa Anita, but we preferred to stay with them, and so we ended up with Santa Anita and Roller. And at one time, Fred, the oldest one, was preparing the truck so we could all go to Utah or Colorado. But during that time, the border was closed. No more people leaving the state. So that was the end of that. So that's why we ended up in Santa Anita. Yeah, that was our life.
Were you able to even think about going to Tuna Canyon?
No, I really haven't. Maybe I will one of these days. I haven't been to Lake Neither. He told me he did. I haven't. I'm not too sure whether, you know, I'm able to anymore. My problem, no matter where, you know, there's walking to be done, and I can't do that. So I'm more or less stuck here.
When they took your father away, were you able to go to Tuna Canyon at all?
No. Well, I guess some people were able to, but we didn't know about those things in Terminal Island. I heard of people visiting their father at Tuna Canyon, but they had to stay so many feet away from the fence, and the time was limited, and things of that sort. But we never knew, I didn't, that could be done. And of course, we had no way to get there to see my father. Yeah. And as far as I know, he didn't stay there very long anyway, so we probably would have missed him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh well, he was a good man, very generous, very gentle, very helpful, very caring, very stubborn, but good father. Yeah. One thing that's peculiar to me, when I think about it, when we're in Terminal Island, when he's home, every now and then he had a doctor's appointment. And whenever he had a doctor's appointment, he always wore his suit, coat and tie. You don't do that today, but that's what he did. Every time he had an appointment with a doctor, he went with his coat and tie. Yeah. Well, you know, another thing, I guess I'm just skipping around, but one of the things that helped us was the Baptist church that I attended, and we had a minister from the Midwest, and she was very helpful to all of us, and that really gave us a lot of comfort. Her name was Virginia Swanson. Everybody loved her. Anyway, the head minister there was a Reverend Yamamoto. And I found out after I came back to to LA that they were married somewhere along the way, and that was nice. But yeah, I remember Gloria Swanson, not Gloria, Elizabeth Swanson. Even when I went to church in camp, I always thought about her first. Yeah, I was always thinking about her. Somehow I feel like she's the one who pulled me through during those days. Yeah, was a nice, great person. Yeah.
Did they go to camp also?
Hmm?
Did they go to camp also?
No, they didn't. You know, I don't know about the Reverend. He was Japanese, so maybe he did, but I'm not too sure. Yeah, and she was American, so she was free. Yeah.
There's a Baptist church?
Yeah, that's the only church we had on
in
Terminal Island. One Baptist church and one Buddhist church, I guess. That was about it. We had the elementary school, a Japanese fisherman hall, where we saw Japanese movie and had programs, things like that. So that was our source of entertainment. Go see a Japanese movie. Nowadays, you know, you don't hear about those actors anymore. They're gone many years ago.
Did
Yeah.
you speak Japanese?
Huh?
Did you speak Japanese to your parents?
To my parents, I did. Even now, I could speak Japanese, not very well. It's hard to carry on a conversation, but I understand everything that is said. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite songs from those days, Japanese songs? Or
No, there were many Japanese songs that I liked. Of course, there was a movie called Aizen Katsura. There's a song from that. I remember those songs, and those were very good. And my father too, he also went to Yokohama once from Terminal Island to Yokohama to see Hibari, Misora Hibari perform. And at that time, she was just a little kid, just getting into the news, and for some reason, he liked her, I guess, and he went and saw her. And then a few days later, she became the best singer and star in Japan. You know, so he has some interest that we didn't know about.
you like boxing? You like,
Yeah. Yeah.
was he a religious man?
Hmm?
Was he religious?
No. No. I'm the, let's say, the kids, we went to Baptist, and that was about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're not Buddhists. They're not Christian. I don't know.
How did you end up in the Baptist church?
Huh?
How did you end up in the Baptist?
Oh, because that was the only one there, and it was close by, and I used to go every Sunday, and I enjoyed the Christmas because we had Christmas program, and they gave us these Christmas stocking with candy in it, yeah, and it was fun. And right across the church was the baseball field, and that's where the San Pedro Skippers played. So we watched over there. Yeah.
Did your brother play for San Pedro Skippers?
No, he didn't. He was in a judo team. Yeah, and we used to go to Los Angeles for the judo tournament. He was not on the team, I don't think, but we went every year. Yeah. It was on It was on First and San Pedro Street. Yeah, there's a hall.
When you look back on your childhood in Terminal Island, what was your favorite moment? What was your favorite memory of Terminal Island?
Well, I'm not too sure. I think my favorite would be just fishing at the harbor and swimming, and going to the beach to get clams and things like that. That was our thing, you know, everything to do with water, swimming, fishing, clamming. Nothing else.
Who's the biggest fish you caught?
Oh, we caught a pretty good sized smelt. Smelt was a very strong fish. It was hard to pull them in sometime. They were big. As I said, it's coming like that. And very powerful. It could pull you in. Yeah, and we caught a lot of them. It was all over the place. we go to the boat that came in with fish, and we asked for a fish, get it used for bait, and we cut it up, used that as bait, and went fishing. Yeah.
Did you catch any tuna?
Huh?
Did you catch any tuna?
No,
Oh,
not just local fish. Yeah, mainly smelt, perch, what else? Croaker, halibut, things like that. Yeah, not much.
You enjoyed fishing.
I enjoy fishing.
You
Yeah.
still do?
No, not anymore. I like to go, but first thing I think about going fishing or any place is parking and the crowd. I don't want to be looking for a place to park and then walk to the pier or wherever. So no, I just don't go anymore.
Well, you had quite a career
Yeah.
that I haven't asked you about, but I know you traveled all over Europe.
Oh, well, my job, was with the PX. I ran the entire operation. I was a general manager in the Army base or camp. And so every facility that we operated, the main store, the main cafeteria, the server station, snack bars, laundries, everything to do with customer service. That was my job to oversee all that. And every 2 years or so, they call me and say, yeah, you're getting a new assignment. And that's the way it was. We moved every 2 or 3 years. So from Fort Ord, I went to Puerto Rico, and went to Fort Bragg, went to Panama, came back. So I did enough traveling, I think.
How did you meet your wife?
I met my wife in Japan. She was born in Seattle. Yeah, her father was a general manager of a Japanese trading company in Seattle. And it was a fairly big operation. Well, he was called back to Japan by his main office. So they all went back together, except for the eldest son who stayed behind to finish high school. And my wife at that time was, I think, 7 or 8 years old. And they went to the father's home in Kamakura. And my wife was very active in sports and things like that. She was like a tomboy at that time. And then one day she fell at school and got carried back to the house, and the mother checked her and said, "Oh, this is terrible." Then she was ready to call the doctor when the mother's brother came to visit. He's a doctor. So he looked at her and he said, "Oh, she has to be operated right away." So they took her to the hospital in Yokohama. My wife's 3 brothers were doctors, and her brother was a doctor too. So they had enough doctors around. Anyway, they were able to save the leg. There was a lot of pus and everything else, and she had polio. Found out. So they saved her leg, but the leg was locked. The knee was locked. It was like that all her life. But still then she played golf and she bowled and she played bridge and Oh, she was very active.
Didn't stop her.
Yeah.
So how many children then?
We only had one
Were
girl.
one girl.
Yeah.
What is her name?
Natalie.
Natalie.
Yeah, she's visiting in Martha Vineyard today.
Oh.
Yeah. Her husband had family relatives there.
Mm.
Yeah, so they'll be back next week, I'm sure. She, hmm?
How old is she?
She's 53, I think.
Grandchildren?
No grandchildren.
Not yet. Not yet.
Too bad, yeah. I wish I had a few. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you had a nice life.
Well, I think it was pretty exciting life, I guess. But it had its ups and downs, you know, like everybody. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. But we never had any problem to feed ourselves and to live. You know, we were always okay. We always said among ourselves, working for the PX, we always said to ourselves, we'll never get rich, but we'll never go hungry. So it was a steady job, you know. Mm-hmm.
So how far up the ladder did you go?
Huh?
How far up the ladder did you go?
In the job?
Your job title?
Job title? Well, I started as a pricing clerk in a warehouse in Japan, and then I became a retail manager in Korea. I went to Misawa Air Force Base, and I was a merchandise manager there. I went to New Jersey, and then I went to Fort Leonard Wood, and I was promoted to general manager, assistant general manager there. And then I went to Fort Ord, and I was assistant general manager. And when I went to Puerto Rico from there, then I was promoted to general manager. So I was a general manager until I retired.
That's pretty high up the ladder.
Yeah, it was pretty high up, I guess.
GS?
Huh?
GS?
Well, in our case, it was equivalent to a GS.
No.
But we had another, and we were the same grade, 15, 14, 13. I was a grade 15.
It's like a colonel.
Yeah, 15 would be equivalent to a colonel, you know, today.
U.S. Army.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Ever have any questions?
Well, we didn't get this on camera, but so did you want to talk a little bit about Rower and the things you guys
Oh, yeah.
remember?
And talk about Santa Anita and Rower. We were in the same camp.
Oh, yeah. Well, Santa Anita, we were in a horse race track, right? And didn't do much. I remember going to the mess hall in the grandstand. I think it was a red mess hall, and then we had church service at the grandstand, and then for exercise I jogged around the horse race track, walked around. Not much. There was a riot. Do you remember that? Yeah, there was a big riot in Santa Anita, and I remember once I went to the Orange Mess Hall. There was a group of FBI agents and all the Japanese, you know, radicals, I guess. And I remember clearly one of the agents had a gun, I think. And one of the camp internee, he took his shirt off and he challenged the agent to shoot. Yeah, I remember that part.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was the worst thing that happened in Santa Anita. Yeah, and then we went to Rower. Went to pick cotton. You know, the field next door was cotton at that time, and they cleaned it and became a athletic field. And they built a gym. Yeah, and I didn't go into woods, I was scared of snakes. You know, I heard of snakes. You name it, and they have it there, all kind of snakes. So I didn't go there. We usually played pinochle, or with ping pong, or other type of cards play, and we just hang around in the rec room, just us boys, you know, not really doing anything.
Do you remember the names of some of your friends in
Hmm?
camp? Do you remember some of the names of your friends in
Yeah,
camp?
the one that passed away just 2 weeks ago, his name was Aki Sugita. Yeah, he was in the same block, and he passed away. He was 13 and I was 12 years old. So when he passed away, he was 88, and that was just several weeks ago. And the other family, of course, was the Ige family, Frank and all the others. Yeah, and there's another family I remember had a son. I think his name was Yamazaki, and he was. I don't know whether he was drafted or whether he volunteered, but he went into the service, and he was with the 100th Battalion, and about three or 4 months later, he got killed in action. And years later, I went to the Evergreen Cemetery for other service, and so I looked around the monument. You know, they have a monument for them, and right in front there was his plaque. I said, "Gee, you know, that was when he went to service was like 1944, 45, and he got killed in 3 months or so." Yeah. So, and then I had other casual friends, but no one very close. I don't think we ever got close, except for those people who were teammates in some kind of sport. Yeah. I wasn't very active. I'm still not active. Yeah.
From camp, you went to the lake, and then you went to Japan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then when you came back from Japan,
I came back. As a employee of the PX because I got the job there, and after 4 years in Misawa, I got an assignment to go to New Jersey, and that's when I came back. Yeah.
so your wife traveled all the way around the world
Mhm.
with you.
Yeah, sure did. Yeah. Well, I went to Panama when President Carter gave Panama away to the Panamanian government. That was in 1979, and October was the official date for transfer. So I went in June to prepare the PX facilities for everybody. And at that time, I drove around the base, and there were big signs on the rock. It says, "Keep the canal, give Carter away." See, those Panama Canal employees had a very good life there. They had everything they wanted in their own community. So when the canal was transferred, the canal people, they lost all that. So we had to provide that. And that's why I went. So I had to provide them with commissary, PX, cafeteria, all that. And so overnight we had 11 or 12,000 new customers.
How did you feel about having to go back to Japan when you were still a kid?
I went back a number of times. I enjoy going back. But what I enjoy most was seeing the changes. You know, every time you go back, there's something new or something missing, not the same anymore. And at that time, my wife, she has a couple of cousins there, so we go see them and sightsee. But but it was just nice going there. We just like to go visit Kamakura, where my wife's family came from, the cherry blossoms, you know.
But you were not in the army.
Hmm?
You were not in the army.
I was in the Air Force.
Air Force.
Yeah. At one time, when I was in Misawa, the Air Force Base, we used to go to the officers' club in the evening after work. One evening I went there with a group, and one lady, she's an officer's wife, approached me and told me what I was doing. So I said, I work for the PX. And she knew that. Then she asked, did you ever serve in the service? Yeah, I said, yeah, I was in the Air Force. And she said, which Air Force? Meaning whether it was Japanese or U.S. So nowadays, when I'm asked, which Air Force what service did you serve in? I say, oh, it's always the U.S. Air Force. Yeah,
Was that during the Korean?
that was after the Korean War.
After the Korean War.
Yep.
Before the Vietnam.
When I was there, I was asked one time if I would volunteer to go to to Vietnam. But I declined because I had a new assignment and I was just getting used to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but many people went from the States, yeah. Some went for the second time too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think you learned from your father?
Well, I don't know what I learned from my father. I guess I learned patience, maybe.
Or your mother.
You know,
Or your mother.
being careful, being kind, things like that. Nothing in like any kind of skill or trade or thing like that. Just everyday, things. Be nice to people, things like that. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And your mother? What did you
My my mother was about the same. I think she was more strict than my father, but she was nice. She was always doing something for us, and she always stayed in touch with the neighbors, so they'll chat outside many times. Yeah, that was their neighborhood chat.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you had a very nice childhood.
Hmm?
Sounds like you had a very nice childhood.
Well, it was. In Terminal Island, it was very nice. Yeah, it was. The war spoiled everything for all of us. Yeah.
What would you say to the young kids today from what you've learned in life?
Well, I don't care for the music they have today. I don't listen to that at all. I sometimes think that serving some time in the military will help them become men. Teach them discipline. I think that's what they need, because they're so carefree and that they do crazy things. Yeah, it's too bad the kids. Well, there are many good kids, of course, but with all the alcohol and drugs and marijuana and things like that, you never know what to expect from kids anymore. Yeah, it's scary. Yeah, I wish it was like the good old days, when it wasn't like that. Never heard of a crime in Terminal Island. Yeah.
Yeah. Very close-knit families.
Hmm?
Terminal Island had very close.
Yes.
Everybody was
Yeah, we were all
very
close,
close.
the whole family, yeah. Yeah.
like one big family.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's, Rob Fukuzaki? the Channel 7. I heard his parents or uncle was from Terminal Island. And of course Russ, his grandfather. And there are, I'm sure, others, yeah. But there are not many left of us, our age, yeah. Yeah, we're a endangered species. Oh,
Still doing good.
well, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Yeah. We really appreciate your time and having us.
Oh,
interview
you're welcome.
you
I
for-
hope I did okay.
Oh, you did
I hope
great.
give you the information.
You did great. We just,
I have skip around sometime because.
well, that's good. We want you to because
Uh-huh.
you know that's how we remember things. We remember things
Yeah.
from here. It skips around in our mind.
Mhm.
When you go home, you'll probably think of, oh yeah, this and that.
Yeah, my wife. Actually, I met her at work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was working for the PX warehouse, and she was there as a receptionist, and we used to meet at the coffee stand,
Oh.
and someone introduced her to me, and then after that we started dating, and gee, we dated was 6 or 7 years before we got married.
What was your first date?
Oh, it was terrible. One, maybe I should. I guess I should. My wife wanted to see a show, or maybe it was me, but it was at the Imperial Theater in Tokyo. It was one of the stage shows, well known, and I said, I'll meet you at the station, Tokyo Station. So I met her there. I went to the theater. I didn't make a reservation. I just bought 2 tickets, whatever was available. And that was a big mistake. It was at the highest point in the theater, way up there. Could hardly see the stage. My wife said, never again. And it was so hot up there. I did some dumb things.
So she went on a second date with you.
Yep, it did. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we didn't. You know, for days I don't know whether we did much. Went to see her uncle and the family in Yokohama, and they have a hospital, private hospital. So we used to go there quite often. And those days, good food was hard to come by. If I go to the hospital, I have good food there. The wife was very good cook, and she made all kinds of dishes. So I said, well, okay, we'll go there.
Her leg, was she able to walk?
She was able to walk with a limp, with a big limp, yeah. But never used a cane, yeah. And of course, when she sat down on the floor, her right leg was stretched out, yeah. And one day, my daughter was about 4 years old. We were in the store, and she was running around. So I said, Natalie, sit down. She sat, and she said exactly the way my wife did, with her right leg stretched out.
That was normal.
Yeah, they see those things. Yeah, yeah.
What does Natalie do? What kind of work does she do now? What kind of work does Natalie do?
She worked in different jobs, clerical work. She worked for Florence Henderson for a while as her secretary. Then she worked for a camera lens company that sold lens to the cameraman in the studio. And then she got a job at the TV Academy, and that's where she met her husband. And they were there for some time, and then they both quit, got married, and they formed a internet company. And at first they had a room about this size with two computers and something else, and my wife was the administrative assistant. She did all the paperwork and scheduling, and my son-in-law, he hired a couple of guys. So it worked out well. In a couple of years, it got pretty big. They had to move to a bigger office, and after that, they even moved and got a new building, and then they sold the whole thing. So now they're free. That's why they travel.
That's good. That's great. That's great.
Everybody asks me, what is your daughter and husband doing? I said, I don't know. I guess they're traveling. And she does some volunteer work in Pasadena. Yeah, but other than that, I'm not too sure.
That's neat. Yeah. You had a great life. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
That's nice. That's nice. So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
If there's anything else you want to talk about,
Gee.
that comes to your mind.
No, I guess not. Well, let's see. No, we had a nice retirement after I retired, because I retired in San Bernardino, and then we had a house in San Jose. So we moved there, and I was a member of the JCO chapter for a couple of years, and made good friends, and play golf every day, you know, and it was a nice life.
Yeah.
And then my friend, and they moved to San Antonio, where their son and grandson were. And then later on, we moved to LA, and we ended up in Corona. And I went to the golf course there one day and met old friends. And one of them was the one who passed away just recently. And they told me to join the club. So I played many good years with them.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
nice.
good friend. Yeah, had a nice time.
In Corona.
Hmm?
In Corona.
In Corona, and we went to other golf courses too. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was nice to be back, to be among friends again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I had 2 or 3 friends who played in the golf course who we served together in the Air Force
Oh,
in Japan.
wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Not too many Japanese in the Air Force.
No, not too many. Yeah, there's a lot from Hawaii.
Really?
Yeah. Well, that's my life in a nutshell.
Quite a nutshell. Well, we hope we're still trying to find people from Tuna Canyon.
Uh-huh.
You know, any descendants, if you know